Now, people always ask me, what would happen if an alien civilization actually managed to build a ship and point it at Earth? And the popular picture in every science fiction film is the same. The enormous glowing ship gracefully glides through the darkness, slows down, hovers magnificently above our cities, and parks itself like a taxicab outside a hotel. And I have to tell you honestly, as someone who has spent his entire life thinking about how nature actually behaves, that picture is so deeply wrong it is almost painful to look at. Let me give you a picture that is much closer to what the physics actually demands. Imagine you are an engineer, and you have been handed the most ambitious project in the history of any civilization. You have to build a train. Not just any train. A mechanical bullet train so massive and so heavily loaded with fuel and equipment that it dwarfs anything humanity has ever constructed. Now you place this train on a perfectly flat, frictionless track and you ignite your engines. You burn fuel at an absolutely furious rate, and over months and years you push this train faster and faster until it is moving at 10,000 miles per hour. Now here is the terrifying part. You have burned all of your fuel to reach that speed, every last drop, and now you see the destination station approaching in the distance. You lift your foot from the accelerator and you wait to slow down, and nothing happens. Because on a frictionless track, lifting your foot does absolutely nothing. The train does not care that the station is coming. The train simply continues at 10,000 miles per hour because that is what the physics demands. The only way to stop that train is to point an equally powerful set of engines in the opposite direction and burn an identical amount of fuel fighting your own momentum. And if your tanks are empty, you do not stop. You become a projectile. You become a kinetic missile of unimaginable destructive force plowing into the station at full speed. That is not a metaphor. That is the precise mechanical description of what deep space travel physically requires. The universe between the stars is not like a road where friction bleeds away your speed naturally over time. It is an absolute vacuum, a perfect frictionless environment. And every meter per second of velocity you accumulate on the outward journey is a meter per second you must mathematically destroy on the inward journey. The universe does not give it back to you. Nature does not offer a refund on momentum. Now let us think carefully about what the numbers actually look like for a ship crossing interstellar distances. The nearest star to our own sun is roughly 4 light-years away. To cross 4 light-years in any reasonable fraction of a civilization's patience, you need to be moving at a meaningful fraction of the speed of light. Let us be generous and say this advanced civilization manages to push their ship to 1/10 of the speed of light. That is 30,000 kilometers per second. A number so large that our ordinary language barely has the vocabulary to describe it. At that speed, the kinetic energy locked inside a moderately sized ship, say something comparable to a large ocean freighter, is not measured in tons of explosive force. It is measured in units comparable to the total energy output of a nuclear arsenal many thousands of times over. That energy is real, it is physical, it is stored inside the motion of every atom in that vessel. And to arrive safely at our solar system, every single joule of that energy must be methodically removed before the ship can do anything useful like enter an orbit. The way you remove it is by burning fuel in the opposite direction of travel. And here is where the physics becomes completely unforgiving in a way that feels almost personal. The more fuel you carry to slow yourself down, the heavier your ship becomes. And the heavier your ship becomes, the more kinetic energy it accumulates during the acceleration phase. Which means you now need even more fuel to stop the heavier ship, which makes the ship heavier still, which requires more fuel still. Physicists and engineers call this the tyranny of the rocket equation, and it is one of the most brutal mathematical truths in all of transportation physics. Every kilogram of stopping fuel you load onto the ship is a kilogram that must itself be accelerated to near light speed and then decelerated again. The equation does not care how clever your engineers are. It does not care how advanced your metallurgy is. The mathematics compounds against you with every kilogram added to the manifest. So the first physical wall a civilization encounters is not building a fast ship. Fast ships are conceptually straightforward. The first wall is building a ship that can carry enough fuel to stop itself. And the mathematics of that problem has a deeply uncomfortable answer. The fuel requirement does not grow linearly with distance or speed. It grows exponentially. For a ship crossing 4 light-years at 1/10 the speed of light, the fuel mass required to decelerate safely would dwarf the mass of the payload by factors that strain ordinary comprehension. We are not talking about a ship with large fuel tanks. We are talking about a structure where the payload, the crew, the equipment, the computers, the life support represents a tiny fraction of a percent of the total mass. The rest is propellant. And burning all of that propellant in the opposite direction of travel requires an engine system of extraordinary sustained power operating continuously for years. Now suppose they solve all of that. Suppose they somehow carry the fuel, or they find a way to harvest energy from the interstellar medium, or they use a technology so advanced we cannot currently imagine its mechanism. Let us say they solve the deceleration problem completely. They are now approaching our solar system at a reduced but still enormous speed. They now enter the second physical nightmare. Our solar system is not empty space. It is surrounded by an enormous diffuse cloud of material left over from the formation of the planets billions of years ago. Rocky debris, frozen ice bodies, microscopic grains of silicate dust moving in complex orbits. The outer boundary of our solar system, the region called the Oort cloud, contains trillions of objects ranging from mountain-sized chunks of rock and ice down to particles no larger than a grain of sand. And here is the physical reality that makes this region catastrophically dangerous for any ship moving at high velocity. At 1/10 the speed of light, a grain of sand is not a grain of sand anymore. The physics of kinetic impact transforms that microscopic particle into something with the localized destructive force of a military explosive. The energy delivered to the hull of the ship upon impact is not proportional to the mass of the grain alone. It is proportional to the mass multiplied by the square of the relative velocity. And at 30,000 kilometers per second, that square term produces a number so large that the grain of sand delivers an impact comparable to a substantial conventional weapon. Not a firecracker. Not a hand grenade. A weapon. Now multiply that by the density of particles in the debris cloud surrounding our system. The ship is not threading a needle through empty space. It is flying at near light speed through a field of randomly distributed kinetic warheads of varying sizes. Every centimeter of hull surface is a target. Every second of transit through the cloud brings thousands of individual impacts. The cumulative damage is not survivable by any material science we can currently describe. The hull does not crack. It does not develop a leak. It ablates. It erodes. It is mechanically consumed by the continuous bombardment the way a block of ice is consumed by a blowtorch, relentlessly and completely. Advanced materials might resist individual impacts better than our current alloys. That is fair to acknowledge. But the physics does not negotiate. It only adjusts the timeline. The debris field does not care how strong your hull is. It cares only about the kinetic energy being delivered per square centimeter per second. And at the velocities required for interstellar travel, the numbers are not on the side of the hull. So let us suppose again that they solve this too. Suppose they engineer a hull material so perfectly resistant to kinetic bombardment that the debris field leaves them largely intact. They have slowed down substantially. They are bruised, but functional. They are now approaching the inner solar system. They can see Earth. The blue dot is growing in their sensors. They now face the third physical wall, and it is the most precisely unforgiving of all. Our atmosphere is not a gentle, welcoming cushion. From the perspective of a descending object carrying even moderate residual velocity, it is a wall of compressed gas that behaves thermodynamically more like a solid than a fluid. The molecules of nitrogen and oxygen in our upper atmosphere cannot move out of the way fast enough when a large object descends rapidly. They pile up in front of the descending vehicle and compress with enormous force. That compression generates heat, not warmth, heat measured in thousands of degrees, the kind of heat that turns aerospace-grade metals into glowing liquid droplets. The angle of atmospheric entry is critical, not approximately critical, precisely critical. The corridor of safe entry for any vehicle descending from orbital velocity is measured in fractions of a single degree. Too steep, and the compression is instantaneous and total. The kinetic energy of the descent converts to thermal energy faster than any material can conduct it away. The vehicle does not burn, it converts. The structure, the crew, the equipment, everything transforms into a plasma fireball that disperses harmlessly into the upper atmosphere. too shallow, and the atmosphere acts as a curved mirror, deflecting the vehicle back out into space on a new trajectory. The vehicle skips off the atmospheric boundary like a flat stone off the surface of a pond, and it tumbles back into the vacuum with no remaining ability to correct the approach. The guidance system required to thread this entry corridor must know the precise density profile of the atmosphere at every altitude. It must know the exact gravitational field of the planet to a high degree of accuracy. It must be capable of making continuous real-time adjustments to the vehicle's attitude and orientation throughout the entry sequence. And it must do all of this after the hull has been mechanically stressed by years of continuous microdebris impacts and after the propulsion system has been running at full power for the duration of the deceleration burn. The failure modes multiply on top of each other. A hull weakened by debris impacts is more vulnerable to thermal stress during atmospheric entry. A propulsion system that has been burning at maximum capacity for years is more likely to develop mechanical faults precisely when precise thrust corrections are most needed. The physical challenges do not present themselves politely one at a time. They arrive simultaneously and they interact with each other in ways that compound the danger. And this is the real lesson that the physics teaches us about interstellar arrival. It is not that alien civilizations are insufficiently clever. It is that the universe has structured the problem of interstellar travel in a way that punishes success at each stage with a new and more demanding challenge at the next stage. Going fast enough to cross the distance creates the deceleration problem. Decelerating creates the debris problem. Surviving the debris creates the atmospheric entry problem. And each of these problems is governed not by engineering preferences, but by the foundational laws of momentum and thermodynamics which do not bend for anyone. Nature does not arrange the cosmos for convenience. It arranges it according to mathematics. And the mathematics of kinetic energy, orbital debris, and atmospheric friction collectively form a physical barrier around this planet that does not care about the intentions of whoever is approaching. The laws apply uniformly, they apply completely, and they do not make exceptions for advanced civilizations, because the laws do not know what a civilization is. They only know mass, velocity, energy, and the cold, indifferent accounting that follows from combining those quantities. If an alien vessel ever does appear in our sky, the most probable reason it will not survive the arrival is not that the pilots made a mistake. It is that the universe itself was waiting for them at every step of the journey, armed with the same physics it uses on everything else. Momentum cannot be wished away, debris cannot be reasoned with, and the atmosphere has been performing the same thermal calculation on every incoming object for 4 billion years without a single exception. The universe is consistent. That is the one thing you can always count on.